Hello, everybody. Welcome to the People of Nature podcast. Today is our latest episode, and today we are welcoming a new expert with us, working in a field which has not been covered in our podcast before, and that is the very critical and important issue of wildlife rescue and rehabilitation. And he works with one of the most fascinating, revered, feared, and yet misunderstood animals, and that is snakes. So today we have with us Aaron Fernandes from Goa. So just briefly giving the introduction of Aaron. Aaron is an artist, wildlife rescuer, and snake enthusiast. His interest in the study of snakes and reptiles began way back while he was in school in the mid 90s, and he turned it into a full-fledged passion over the decades. He is currently founder member of the Chameleon Wildlife Rescue Organization based in Goa and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. He has worked with forest departments in both Andaman and Nicobar, as well as Goa, coordinating training programs on ethical rescue protocol, assisting on research projects, studying the very unique island king cobras and venom collection from isolated, unique, and very insular populations. He is particularly interested in snake bite from the Indian perspective and works closely with the snake rescue community to mitigate conflict and improve rescue technique with safety awareness and ethics as the fundamentals that should constitute the perfect rescue. So, welcome Aaron Fernandez to the podcast. I hope you are doing
Yeah.
fine.
Good evening. Nice to meet you. Good evening, everybody.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So today our audience will hear a very interesting story of someone who
Yeah.
has very independently worked in wildlife rescue and very motivated speaker we have with us today. So I will start straight with the first question. As I said, Aaron is fascinated by snakes, so we'll start with that only. So Aaron, you have been fascinated by snakes since your childhood. So what was your first and most memorable encounter with a snake?
Okay. That's a very loaded question to start with, but it's good that it started this way. As you said correctly, my fascination did start at a very early age in school, and that really happened as a result of the type of school that I was in. So I was in a Jesuit school wherein the faculty and the staff and a lot of the teachers and professors were priests and from the Jesuit institution themselves. So not to say anything about that, but they have a way, which is a little unconventional sometimes with the way they deal with things. And we had a principal actually who used to catch snakes, so much so that his nickname by the students was Cobra. But and yeah, so the thing is that this priest actually had a room where he would keep a lot of these reptiles and snakes, and if anybody misbehaved, there were many times when he would tell you go and sit in that room and he would close the door. Not that the
Okay.
not really that the snakes were let loose or anything. They were in boxes and it was safe from that point of view, to say so. But just to be in a room full of reptiles and snakes was scary for the normal child. But on this one occasion when I was actually told to stay over there in that room was the first interaction and initiation, so to say, into snakes. And then when I looked into the boxes and I saw what was there, I was completely fascinated with this animal. And as far as my memory can take me back to recall the first instance I actually got captivated with this group of animals, being reptiles in general, but snakes in particular, was that particular day. I can actually take it back to that event. So if you are asking me when exactly it happened, I can very honestly say with complete surety that it was that day.
Okay, that's a very unusual and fascinating story, and how a punishment turned out to be the starting point of a fascination
Yeah.
with snakes. That is very interesting, and your professor principal also seems like a very interesting character. Uh, they caught snakes and used it as a kind of a punishment. Yeah, so that was an interesting start. So later you pursue a degree in arts and especially specializing in painting. So
But
did your love for painting develop along with wildlife, or did it take place before your interest in wildlife began?
I always had an interest in wildlife, but and painting at the same time. The both of them were similar kind of passions that started at the same time, very very early in life, in as a child. But the thing is that the fascination with animals and that kind of thing is not something that you can start really by yourself, as compared to painting, which you just take a brush and or a pencil and you can start drawing and nobody will really say anything about it. But so from that angle the interests were the same, but I never really had that exposure into wildlife as early as I did with art. But what happened was that when I actually joined art college, that was a point of time when I was already like catching snakes and everything, but it was purely for the excitement and the passion, of doing what I was doing, although it was incorrectly done. But when I then school happened, and as I told you, this priest was catching snakes. There were other students, seniors of mine, also in school who used to handle snakes and everything, and I was very fascinated. But it was only when I actually joined art college that I realized that many of the my seniors in art college were actually also guys who were, actually founder members of an organization which was rescuing wildlife in the state of Goa, and probably one of the pioneering organizations in the state at that time. This must have been like in 98 or 99 or something. And at this point of time, even me and my parents and well wishers and all were very skeptical about these two passions which seemed so very contradictory. This love for snakes and reptiles and wildlife, which is a science kind of a thing, and art, which is again very different from this. So it was a little bit of a dilemma as to what really I wanted to follow and pursue and everything. And then when I reached art college and I realized that there are artists who are also very serious about conservation and wildlife rescue and everything, and then it's possible. I thought to myself that both the things can be done together simultaneously. And that's when I joined this group which was called the Green Cross, because a senior of mine in art college, a guy called Nirmal Kulkarni, who is a herpetologist today and very well known in the wildlife circles and everything, was one of the first people who actually allowed me to take that step and get into this whole new world of wildlife rescue and conservation, and something that I had very deep down in my heart, but no real stepping stone to actually reach there. So from that angle, art college helped me out in both ways, and that's how a lot of the thing that I really am doing today really kicked off from that point. So yeah, that's it.
It was great to hear that your college itself provided, not the college directly, but like the people you studied within college provided
Yes, yes,
you the information to start actually into herpetology. And of course, like having people who guide you and show you the way is important in college days, both positively and negatively, depends on the company. But
exactly.
definitely it must have had a role to play for you, and it was nice to hear that. So we come on nicely to the third question. You already mentioned Green Cross and work in wildlife rescue. So after you joined, how were the initial days getting used to actually working in that field, and how this overall experience, and any crazy rescue stories which you want to share, which you even
Yeah,
remember today?
there are many rescue stories actually, but the thing is that the Green Cross, like I said, gave me a stepping stone, to get into the wildlife rescue, the job basically, and it was really exciting in the beginning because right in the beginning, rescue was something I really didn't know very much about, but I was more fascinated in the fact that if I am a rescuer, then I will be able to handle one of my most favorite animals, and very ethically and properly, and without minimizing the risk as much as possible. And that was a very positive point that I caught on to. Later on, I understood the reason for why rescues are very important. I understood why it is extremely important to rescue in a proper way, and what really to consider to be a rescue, because as you know what's happening today, like people are doing a lot of things under the name of rescue. But I think the Green Cross gave me a very good understanding of at that point, for those times, about how to go about the whole business. And because there were people who knew what they were doing, I also got like trained in a proper way about dealing with snakes and handling them, and mitigating conflict from that angle. And it was really exciting. And again, over the years, with experience, and it's been a long time now, it's been like 24 years now, since 98 or 99, when I actually joined them. But over the years, experience has taught me a lot of things. And there have been many memorable rescues. When I say memorable, it does not, to be very honest, it doesn't necessarily mean very exciting and all in that sense, but dangerous also, which I really remember a lot, which is memorable. And which has taught me a lot, wherein I won't make those kind of mistakes again, because they can be life threatening. And again, like a message to all rescuers who are just starting out, to be careful with what you're doing, because it's a dangerous business if you don't know what you're doing and you're not doing it correctly. Now, to think about one very memorable rescue is, I knew how to handle snakes, but we didn't really calculate. I didn't calculate other factors that are sometimes very important when dealing with a rescue, which in many cases are not very straightforward. So one of these times, I remember getting down into a well, which was rather deep, and to retrieve a rat snake that had fallen in. Then not realizing, and we didn't have harnesses that time, and it was just ladder, tied upon ladder, and a rope around your waist, and three people lowering you down into this very deep well, wherein I reached the bottom of the well, and I realized that there was all those gases, and lack of oxygen and all that, which I was almost fainting, and I had to literally be pulled out in a lifeless, almost lifeless kind of a state. I did manage to get the snake, but it was a very dangerous thing and a stupid thing to do, actually. But then again, I was young, I was very excited. I just had to catch that snake. I volunteered to be the one out of three people to get down, and so yeah, memorable from that angle, but not necessarily a smart thing. But yeah, this is one I do remember. Then again, there have been many other cases where we've fallen through the roofs in the rain while trying to rescue cobras and things like that. So it's dangerous, and a lot comes to mind, but this one just kind of came to mind right now, so I spoke about it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I have seen people rescuing, and like definitely dangerous business, and you are like on the edge, living on the edge when you are rescuing. So lots of these incidents happen, but uh, at least you managed to survive those incidents, and I hope you learned a lot from them, because these things also teach you how to go about doing these very complex rescues. They are not easy as they look sometimes, I think.
Yeah. One thing, if I can interrupt you, sorry, when we are on this topic about this, one real important factor, and since this thing is going to be, you know, on a platform where there's going to be a lot of people who can really access this information, and hopefully it is helpful for them. One thing that I can honestly say is, at that point of time, we were fortunate enough to not live in that era of social media and the effects it has. So every time a rescue was attempted, even though, like, I'm talking about in such cases where it could have been done much better than I actually did, we never had that thing at the back of our mind about making a video to post on social media and all. So it was pure rescue, and the whole 100% was on what we were doing. So that was one very important factor that is removed from modern day rescues, when a lot of focus is put on how I look while I'm rescuing, to the general public once the rescue is already over. So that's an important thing I would like to talk about, because a lot of people have the main thing being how cool I'm going to look while I'm rescuing, to get the likes on social media and Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So you need to be really important and careful about the fact that you're doing a very dangerous, potentially dangerous job, and nothing should come in the way at that point of time, but you and what you're doing, with the utmost care, respect for the animal, and all ethics and protocol properly followed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yes, we will talk about that later. There is definitely more focus on rescuers or rescues due to social media, and lots of these things get trending. Not always they are done in the right way. Uh, so yeah, I mean, it is definitely. definitely a big issue nowadays.
Yeah.
And yes, we will talk about it later for sure. So after Green Course, I think one of your more interesting assignments was working on the iconic king cobra with one of India's foremost herpetologists and snake rescuers, Gauri Shankar, who also does a lot of education and awareness on snake rescue himself. So how did this project working with Gauri Shankar influence
Okay.
your work as both a snake rescuer and also a researcher?
Right. So I was at that point of time in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, but I had gone actually on a painting contract. So I had actually gone to do a painting of snakes only on somebody's wall, a very big, massive mural. When when I realized that, and I knew, of course, in the past about the king cobras in the Andamans and how special they are, and the possibility of them being very unique and things like that. And so while I was there, and I don't really remember very carefully whether I already caught one, and I had that snap up somewhere when Gauri actually called me up and asked me whether I would like to help him out, in a project that he was already researching on the king cobras. And then it was like probably the most exciting thing that could ever be proposed to me, especially because it is also Gauri Shankar, and he's a very reputed, renowned herpetologist, and an authority on the king cobras of the world. And I jumped to the occasion, that and the opportunity really to work on this. And eventually, I very, very small contribution, of course, to the entire project, but I just helped with a bit of tissue sampling and the tissue collection of the Andaman population. So the job, besides collecting the tissue samples, was also to actually go and do a little bit of community engagement, mitigate conflicts, and train the different divisions within the Andaman Islands, from the forest departments, of course, in rescue protocol, and how to do it properly, and things like that. So it also enabled me to go places within the islands, to visit a lot of different divisions, to work with the forest departments, to meet with rescuers, understand the local scenario with the people, and the tolerance they have towards it, and what are the conflict situations and how they can be dealt with, and things like that. And then I realized that it's it could, it's a lot different from a lot of the places that I otherwise worked in, because of course it's rural in that sense as compared to Goa, where I come from. And it's a very isolated place, and very beautiful, very fresh, very new to me. And it was all excitement at that point of time. And then I spent about 4.5 years over there, all together doing this. And now that Gauri has actually come up with his paper, and kind of split them into four species, and we know so much more about the king cobras than we previously knew. And just the fact that I contributed in a small way, maybe 2% to the entire thing, is is very rewarding in that sense. Once you actually read about the work that he's done, and the effort and the years that has gone into this research project. So I'm just happy, in a small way I was part of it. So yeah.
Yeah, must be a very exciting experience, and also it was good that the project combined not just research but also working with communities, because for conservation and for knowing wildlife more, you also need to know more about how the communities are interacting with it. Then only you get the full idea, the whole picture of what's going on in that region.
Correct.
Sounds like a very interesting project.
Yeah, it was.
Now you also started since 2012 to a new chapter in your career, and one of the key things you did is starting your own NGO known as Chameleon
Yeah.
Wildlife from scratch, and working on human wildlife conflict mitigation, wildlife rescue, and as well as awareness about wildlife. So, how did they start? What was the inspiration, and how has the journey been? And also, I would like to know how, what kind of challenges you faced, and also the success stories, because it's been 10 years and more, so must have been very eventful, this whole journey.
Yeah. So I actually we actually started Chameleon organization because we wanted to actually branch out and to do things a different way from how it was always being done by around the place by other individuals and all those kind of things, which is why we actually chose the name chameleon. It's a reptile, of course, so it fits into the kind of interest that we have and the type of rescues that we do and everything. But more so because the chameleon is an animal that changes colors. So the line is changing the colors of conservation, which means that we actually were interested in starting something new and branching out into doing a similar kind of a thing from a different angle and a different way of operation. So we started off initially as a wildlife rescue organization, but then catering a lot to awareness and making people aware of the fact that you're living besides potentially dangerous reptiles, and how to actually deal with it and to learn to coexist and all those kind of things. And together with that, there was also this sudden emergence of social media and all this kind of thing, which resulted in a peak in the amount of deaths from envenomation within the country, which we noticed. And then we kind of started focusing more on mitigating a human snake conflict from a snake bite angle. So we realized that a lot of people are getting bitten from venomous snakes because of the fact that their focus is more social media and likes and all those kind of things. And it was not really solely occupational hazard as was earlier thought. So the number of people that were dying were not purely coming from the rural community. They were not purely coming from the agricultural sector, wherein people are putting their hands into thick grasses and working in plantations and stepping on snakes in the field. These were people who didn't know how to catch snakes. For one, they were fascinated with snakes and wanted to utilize a very dangerous reptile to kind of boost your own ego. And it was a completely different section of society within the country that was actually contributing to snake bite in a very substantial amount. So a lot of the focus in the human snake conflict mitigation that we were doing was snake bite from this angle, and that really happened at the same period of time and is still going on right now. So human snake conflict was something that was very close to our the work that we were doing, and still is as of now as well. So a lot of the awareness that we give through, talks and programs and workshops and all, focuses on snake bite itself, and analyzing such events. So we still do, of course, play videos of something like this and then talk to people about it, because it's a hands-on kind of a thing. They get to visually see and experience things that they're already aware of, and then you can dissect and analyze it in a way wherein you can mitigate the conflict by talking to the actual people who are responsible for such things. And there is a change in the way people think, and I think it's beneficial. I think it's very important, and this is something that we are still very, very focused on, because India, as you know, is also considered snakebite capital of the world. We maybe contribute to somewhere close to half of global deaths of snake bite just for one country. So it's really important, if you're going to be conserving an animal that you really like, but which is very dangerous, and at the same time, mitigating this kind of an issue. It's all things need to be handled equally, because if people keep getting bitten, then the hatred for the animal persists, and if the hatred for the animal persists, then there is more killing, so there's less conservation from that angle, and then there is a chance of more bites. So it's really important that as a wildlife conservationist, snake rescue and everything, that you also have to deal with the human aspect of it as well. So from that angle, yeah, the human wildlife conflict was something that we very serious and focused about, and it still is.
I see, I see. I didn't realize it then, but yeah, I mean, definitely social media, from what I remember, WhatsApp, Instagram, all these things started in the mid 2010s. And yeah, it is kind of concerning, like even the snake bites started increasing. But actually, I am interested so in this trend you saw, because did you like do any online research for this, or like did you ask questions to people in your contacts to know this? Because like this is not something which maybe many people link directly with the social media and the snake bite thing. So it's kind of interesting.
this is actually presently, at least with people who work with snake bite, it's an understood fact, because we are
Okay.
seeing the increase in numbers, we are seeing the nature of the bites, we are seeing the section of society which is actually contributing to such things. It's urban, rural, both the places, but this shouldn't be happening really. And people who actually work with snakebite, and I've got a great opportunity actually to be linked to some very very interesting, very knowledgeable colleagues and friends who work with this neglected tropical disease on a regular basis, from herpetologists to snakebite treatment specialists in hospitals, and other conservationists and rescuers, and even people who are actually working on antivenom and venoms and stuff like this. So it's a it's a community of people who are working with the snakebite issue, which is so vast and so big, and you have interaction with different sections of so many types of professionals, that yeah, it is what it is. And maybe some people don't know about it, but it's out there, and it's a fact, and it's a serious issue that needs to be addressed. And I guess that's why it's called a neglected tropical disease, because nobody really knows much about it, or at least until now they didn't.
Yeah, definitely a big issue, and I mean, yeah, the traditional snake bites, which even I have seen lots of documentaries on it, and in some ways they are more inadvertent from the people's side, like going to the farm maybe to fetch something, and by mistake you put a foot on a snake and then it bites. The nature of that is very different from this other thing where it's like more premeditated, and this the new type of the new way in which it is happening is actually more easy to work on, because that is more in the hands of the people literally, in how they approach and how they behave with snakes. And
Yes.
definitely it's a new issue and a bigger issue which needs to be handled. So
Yeah.
definitely, and those are some interesting insights actually about this issue. So I will just try to link this aspect again, because you have been doing lots of awareness and workshops related to snake bite mitigation and human snake interactions. So in general, how has the reception been to these programs, and like what kind of measures were successful with respect to being implemented
Yeah.
snake bite management?
So for one, just to kind of illustrate the difference between what we were earlier doing, which was just snake awareness programs, which was kind of talking about species and what you find around you and how to identify and things like that, to being more specific with just snake bite. So when we do these kind of awareness programs, which is very specifically targeted at mitigating snake conflict, then the target audience also is in many cases a very specific audience. And then depending on who actually chameleon organization or me by myself actually collaborate with, then the target audience also changes. So I work a lot with a very close friend and colleague who is a doctor in Manipal. He's a snakebite treatment specialist and very knowledgeable about the administration of antivenom and dealing with snakebite from so many different angles and everything. That whenever we collaborate, we tend to kind of split the program into different kind of aspects, wherein he would kind of tackle the clinical protocol of dealing with snakebite at the hospital level. So in those kind of cases, many times the programs have been for district hospitals and private hospitals, also PHCs and things like that, wherein they are the kind of first responders when a person is actually brought to a clinic. And in many cases, there's a lack of adequate information as far as snakebite treatment is concerned. So when these type of collaborations are made and the program is purely snakebite oriented, then in many cases the target audience is the medical fraternity. So there are many angles to that also, because just to give you an example about the identification of snakes, many of them are of the opinion that you need to ID the snake first, and all those kind of things. So where that happens, I come into the picture when talking about the identification of species and how in most cases it's not important, together with his expertise. And now very recently he has also, the same friend of mine and colleague, kind of opened this avenue out to wilderness medicine as well, which is a kind of a relatively new thing. So the snakebite awareness programs are linked with wilderness medicine as well. So a snake bite per se in a wilderness setting need not necessarily kill a person only as a result of the venom. Because say for example, a snake bites somebody and then that person, because of whatever is happening, the symptoms, trips and falls, and he can have a secondary kind of an issue wherein he hits his head against a rock and things like that. So dealing with snake bite is a bigger thing than we actually assume in most cases. And it's not just venom, because venom can then lead to other issues and other types of calamities and trauma and things like that. So we've kind of increased the scope of what we are making the general person aware of, whether it is someone who is in a like a specialist at a hospital, or somebody who is just camping in the wilderness and who's more prone to getting a snake bite, and then consequent issues resulting as a result of that, and things like that. So there's no end actually to how much you can actually learn, and how much from what you have learned that you can actually tell other people and teach them and educate them and make them aware of. So it's really interesting, and the more kind of people we are linking with, the more interesting the whole scenario gets, and that's something that I would like to share as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's a very complex issue, and as you said, like because there are so many different types of venoms, variety which they have in the venom, and that drastically impacts the symptoms and the effects it will have on the person. So knowing that is very important. Like the venom which will affect the brain has a drastically different impact on the person who got the bite than the venom which will affect the blood. So even yeah, knowledge of those things, if the if the hospitals and if the relevant people have, that is very important. And
Correct.
yeah, and yes, especially in areas where antivenom and those things are not available, that is another issue. Like making these things available to many places, that will be, I think, the next big step in this whole snake bite thing. And
Correct.
things are ongoing, I think, in that regard. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it is on. There are a lot of people actually who are quite active in trying to figure out where there's a shortage of venom, especially in the rural sector, and how to be able to, through their organizations and through their networks, try and make sure that a steady supply and stock is always available at these centers and places, and even tertiary healthcare centers and everything. So that is ongoing right now. And yeah, so a lot is being done actually in the country on trying to sort out this issue from different angles and by different types of people from different backgrounds. It is interesting. Yeah.
yes, definitely, definitely. And yeah, I had also read like this is like a kind of extra thing, but kind of rated, like because many times people because they don't have full idea of the antivenom, they try some cures, natural cures, which are not exactly effective, and they also delay the recovery. And no, spreading awareness about the correct ways to handle a snake bite is also very important. uh, and I think that also any awareness regarding snake, so that is also one thing in India, I think, which is a big thing.
Yeah. So India is, India is is a country which is so, there's a lot of myth and superstition, and which is influenced by the culture and tradition and all those kind of things, which is ultimately the reason why in many cases anti-venom is not really considered as the first go-to medicine for snake bite, which in fact is the only medicine that is scientifically proven to be able to cure someone from a full contact envenomation from a dangerous snake. But because of this herbal remedy and jadi boti and all these kind of things, there is a lot of practice of going to a traditional healer and trying to sort your problem out over there. There are also misconceptions about how much anti-venom really costs, and whether these people from sometimes poor communities can actually afford it, as compared to just going to a traditional healer and giving him some small amount or maybe a little bit of rice and things like that and getting cured from a snake bite. But honestly, there is no proven cure in anything herbal as of now. And at the same time, when there is an accepted drug in the form of antivenom that is can cure you from a snake bite, that is available in most places, then I think there is no question about going and taking something that you know for sure is going to save you from a bite, as compared to doing all these other things. But as far as the awareness is concerned, one of the main issues that that a lot of rescuers and educators and researchers face when trying to explain to people about this is the fact that they will say that, you know many times when they have gone to a traditional healer after a snake bite, the person has actually cured them. So they've actually survived with a very small amount of money, very close to where they live. So why should I travel all the way to a hospital and take this antivenom when this guy has already cured me, like, 2 or 3 times in the past? And the issue really is the percentage of non-venomous to venomous snakes in the country, which is very close to, like, maybe 8 out of 10, 8 being the non-venomous ones. So the thing is that people really are not aware of ID of snakes, which is why they get bitten by so many times, thinking that they are picking up a python when actually it's a Russell's viper and things like that. The misidentification issue. The thing is that because of the same problem, 8 out of 10 times, if somebody gets bitten by a snake, the chances of it being a non-venomous one are very high. But they are unaware of this. So when they go to a traditional healer and the person supposedly cures them from a bite, he's actually not doing anything. If they had not gone to him also, they would have survived because the snake is non-venomous. But as far as they are concerned, they think that a venomous snake bite was cured by herbal remedy. So every time that this happens, they will go back to the same guy. It is just out of habit and the way it works, basically. Because they don't know how to identify. They don't know that so many times they've been bitten by a non-venomous species. And the one time that they do get bitten by, say, a cobra or a crate or something, his methods and remedies will not be able to cure you. So in that case, the person will die, or he will, end up like reaching hospital very late, wherein now the venom has spread so drastically all over that he's got organ damage, and limbs need to be amputated, and then it's a burden on the family. If he's the working member and bread earner, then the income of the family is affected, and all this kind of thing. So the burden of snakebite is huge, and awareness is extremely important. And every time, I think we need to keep on thinking about new ways of making people aware of the fact that anti-venom is the only thing that can actually save you from a venomous snake bite, and that's the thing that you should go for, irrespective of distance and the availability of transport. And there are ways to work around it, no matter where you may be in the country, and you always have to opt for anti-venom and nothing else.
Yes, sir, definitely. And yeah, I mean, yeah, people might be living little bit in ignorance about what exactly bit them, and then they have a misunderstanding that they were cured when they were not envenomated in the first place. So definitely, and yes, antivenom is like the lifesaver, and the more it reaches to people, and the more people actually believing in it, then it will be better.
True.
Yeah, yeah. So we come to another interesting small project you did, which was designing a biodiversity field guide of the high altitude lake Guru Dongmar for WWF India Sikkim. And actually, in this project, you actually combined your two passions, wildlife and art. So that must have been a very exciting project. So, like, what were the highlights of this project for you?
So more than anything else, it was very satisfying because I actually got to prove that the two things can actually work together, which was something that I was very, very skeptical about, for all this time. Also, my parents needed to be, told this thing, because they didn't. Either you get into the science line, or you become an artist, or how you plan to do both. Like, you can't be like a master of all trades. But basically, that was a time when I like to volunteer for a lot of projects, which also gave me a chance to visit some very uh, beautiful places in the country and work for some nice organizations. At the same time, do what I love to do. And that's how I kind of reached Sikkim. The thing is that there was a time when there was a snow leopard project going on, and I went to Sikkim before the project, permissions actually came through. And then again, because it's Sikkim and it's surrounded by so many other countries, you need permissions from them as well, which takes a while, takes rather longer than other places in India. So I was actually stuck over there without a job and far away from home. And the project was not on, so even the stipend that I would have got if the project had started was, not there on the scene. And then I spent many months not wanting to come back home because I liked it so much, the place, and I had to make some money. So, you know, very kindly, the WWF Sikkim gave me this opportunity to design a field guide for them because they realized that I really loved the place and I wanted to stay there and I needed money as well. So they actually gave me this opportunity to design this field guide and work on these 32 plates of the flora and fauna of this high altitude lake Gurudongmar. And I managed to do that, and it was exciting to do that because it also involved a little bit of research and exciting kind of research, because as compared to a photograph, at least of that time, which you would have in the field guides, the painting, you can accentuate certain parts of the animal which are like key characteristics to look for when IDing them in the field, which you can do very well in a painting and an illustration as compared to a photograph. So so it also suited the purpose of the job, and I managed to do that really well, and they were very happy with it, and I was very happy that I got this opportunity. So then I stayed on for longer and enjoyed the Northeast and Sikkim.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very beautiful place, Sikkim. I haven't been there, but yeah, I have been to Northeast, and it is very lovely. And yeah, it must be great to actually, bring the animals to life with the paintings in the guide, and hopefully, yeah, many people got to know a little bit about its local biodiversity and very unique biodiversity which Sikkim has through that field guide.
Yes.
So. Now going back to your home, Goa, and a little bit about that. So recently, yes, I read that there were a lot of issues in Goa with regards to environment, like habitat destruction, then the whole issue with the Mandal River sharing. So yeah, currently, from your experience working in Goa, in the wildlife and environment field, like what are the current big issues which need a lot more attention?
So I can tell you, you're correct when you say that Goa is right, in the spotlight right now with as far as the destruction to the environment and the fragmentation of forests and conflict situations with wild animals. And we need to understand that Goa is a very small state, so anything adopted in a similar manner, maybe in other places in the country, doing the same thing in Goa, you see the effects very fast. Added to that, Goa is bang in the center of the Western Ghats in a very diverse kind of an area, and it was very green, and there was a lot of nature and all this. There still is, of course, and but it's just post COVID. What we've realized is that there's been a lot of influx of non-Goan people who have decided to come here for many factors, many reasons. One of which is that the living conditions and the quality of life as far as other things related to health are not really the best in other places in the country. And as a result of so many people right now living in this place and this whole property boom, that there are a lot of issues that Goa is actually facing with its nature. One of which is the destruction of forests and the conversion of land and the change of zones. Even to the extent of mangroves, which are some of the most protected type of ecosystems, and NDZ kind of non-development zone, which is completely converted in most cases to development. So mangroves are being filled in and buildings are being put up, and there is a complete disregard to the protection of the environment from that angle. So the thing that we are noticing right now, me included, is that the locals have realized that this is what is happening, and the authorities, not naming in particular anyone, but don't really pay a lot of heed to complaints and what's really going on. And in many cases, they're also hand in glove with everything. because to be able to convert a mangrove to sell it to to a builder, you need all those relevant departments to give permission to do what they're doing. And if that is the case, then they're not the go-to people when you want to sort out these problems. So the general thing right now presently in the state is the filing of public interest litigations in the high court, because the high court seems to be the only place where we're getting some kind of backing and help. And eventually, if the wild spaces in Goa are to be saved, it's only through stay orders that you get through the high court, which then has to be filed by normal lay people. So it's not me being a conservationist, but just somebody from some village who realizes that there is probably a Kazan land that's being filled in, or some waterway is being blocked, and feels that this is going to drastically detrimentally affect his village and the water supply and all. Is the person who's actually the conservationist of today, who's actually going to the high court and filing a petition over there, and hopefully getting a stay, and then that's how it's being protected. So it's not about me. I think everybody who's doing this kind of a thing is a very valid conservationist in the state right now. And from tree cutting to, like I said, the destruction of mangroves, to you know whatever, filling in of certain land, to changing of zones from orchard to settlement to then development, it's a mess right now. And then you have certain people who are forest ministers, who are also TCP ministers, who are also this minister. And it's weird, because if as a town and country planning minister, if you, for example, you want to sell land and change zones, and that is actually protected forest, then being a forest minister is also very beneficial to you, because then you can manipulate everything, and nobody can point a finger at you, and everybody has to listen to what you say because you're their boss, and those kind of things. So it's a hard fight. Not all of these battles are won, but I mean, I thought of getting into it because I was interested in rescuing wildlife. But while I'm trying to save individual animals and snakes and maybe monkeys and all these kind of things, here there are entire ecosystems, entire hills, entire forests being decimated overnight at the one signature made by, for example, the chief town planner or something like that, which is it was heartbreaking more than anything else. So over the years, the focus, I've not stopped rescuing wildlife. I still do it on a regular basis, but I'm trying to focus more on this because I think this is the bigger picture. If you're really going to save the Goa and its wild spaces and the environment and nature and everything, that this is the only option right now. So that's what's happening at the moment.
Yes, yes, these are very big issues, and I can completely relate because even in Maharashtra, even in lots of areas in Maharashtra, especially grasslands, because there's so many grasslands here, and the pressure they are being put under for development, and the ease at which these projects are being cleared, just like they are in Goa in the Western Ghats, it's very concerning. And yeah, as you said, the only way is like if there is more pressure legally on these projects and on these moves, then it might work. And yes, lots of locals are trying to oppose these things, and it is a very big fight actually which is happening. And things are not looking so good, but all we can do is try, I think.
And there is always this how do I say, this idea between these two people that like to isolate each other from one another, which is the ones who want to develop, and the other ones who are considered to be the conservationists and everyone else, and the environmentalists and all, who in all honesty are not the ones who are against development, but we just want the development to be done in a proper manner, and just
Yes.
chopping down thousands of trees, justifying a 6-lane elevated corridor, and saying that you are against development, we are making the place better for everybody, and it's going to benefit you also, and why you against everything, is not really the way out. Because if you have to cut those 700 trees, then you should first try and evaluate other options wherein you can work around it, where you don't need to cut that. Cutting the tree and cutting the forest should not be the first option. Rather, it should be the last when you have exhausted everything else. So, more than being against development, it's like how you look at development and what you consider development. And that's like, I think I can speak for all environmentalists and all, environmental activists and all wildlife people, and everybody who loves nature will say the same thing. You know, it, We want development, of course we want it, it's beneficial to everybody, but do it in a proper manner wherein it's sustainable, and whether it's not 20 years down the line there'll be nothing more to develop. That should not be the way forward.
Yes, definitely. It needs much better planning than what is happening now. It's very haphazard now, and that's the biggest problem. Without consideration to biodiversity and environment. So that is the biggest issue. Definitely, you hit the nail on the head there. So coming to the final few questions. So you did say like you were working a lot on human wildlife interactions and conflict. So uh, what have you observed with respect to relationships, of humans with wildlife in different areas of Goa, like urban areas, rural areas, forest and different ecosystems? Did you see any differences in the approach, or like did you see any commonalities which you can elaborate on?
Yeah, so for one, what I have observed is, and this is purely my observation, is that people who are now moving to Goa and who are now living in Goa, who have come from the big cities, in many cases have not really experienced, kind of coexisting with snakes, for example. Because in a building complex, the chances of you interacting with a venomous cobra is like very slim. But now you're living in a place which is got a quite a dense population of snakes in all different areas. So the tolerance level, as far as this community of people which has newly moved in, is close to zero. So every snake that they see, they think it warrants removal. They think it's a unnatural, abnormal kind of thing to share space with. And every snake is dangerous. Every snake is potentially harmful. And if I'm staying in a compound and I see another snake over there, then someone has to move out. There is a tolerance level is very low as far as this is concerned. So that is talking from the angle of the people who have moved in from a different kind of area. And then there is also the destruction of forests, which is then causing bigger mammals to move out into other areas which they otherwise were not into. So in this kind of a case, although people have lived alongside them, they are not so comfortable with having a leopard in your compound, for example. So every time something is spotted right now, the forest department is called, and the forest department usually comes and sets a trap, and they pick it up from there, and then they will very unscientifically dump it somewhere else. And that is at the crux of the conflict situation, because we are causing the damage to the environment. They are moving out of their habitat. When they move out of their habitat, in most cases, in many cases, it's because for easier kind of prey base. And in the case of leopards, is dogs, and dogs live close to where humans live. So that close proximity kind of factor is what causes the conflict in many cases. Then the leopard is taken from here and dumped somewhere else out of his home range, which is the main thing that causes an animal to become a conflict individual. And then there will be somebody who will now see this animal behaving in a weird way, and they will call the forest division from there. Then again, a trap is set over there. They will come and catch it and release it somewhere else. So it's not really solving the problem. It's only making it worse. So as far as the conflict situation in the state is concerned, it's a multi-pronged approach that you have to address it through. And I think a little more scientific kind of approach would be very beneficial as far as this is concerned. The solution is not to just catch and release, catch and release, catch and release everywhere. And if we know that what we are doing to the environment is causing this, then we should not disregard that, and not just use capture release as a method to you know temporarily solve an issue, only making it much worse. So I think acceptance about what the factors are that contribute to the conflict first, and then working on that is the starting point. And if that is done and accepted by not only me and you and everybody else, but also the authorities, because they are the enforcing agencies, then we can deal with this in a much better way.
Yeah, definitely. And yes, like capture release is just like the bandage to the wound, but the uh, internally the wound definitely needs to be healed. That's like how human wildlife scenario is. And definitely I think the issues of fragmentation and joining habitats together, those need to be focused more, because they are more at the root cause
Yeah.
than the actual thing which is happening, which is more of the effect. So definitely, more scientific and more rigorous ways are needed to tackle this issue. So yeah, coming to the one important topic uh, which we did which we did touch on earlier. Uh, just going back to that is like, as you said, nowadays due to social media, like uh, some enthusiastic people, or should I say over enthusiastic people, try to handle snakes or like these animals just to photograph them, to post on social media for likes, without thinking twice about what they are doing, and the impact these acts will have on the animal and also on themselves. If the animal is venomous and if it strikes back, then it will be a fatal mistake, and it is a fatal mistake in many cases. So how can this trend be reduced, and like how can people like you, who are professional rescuers and wildlife experts, how can they help in actually using education to reduce this issue, which is a big issue now?
So one thing, I'll start on the point of the mistake, since you used that word. Very unlike other things, where you can say we will learn from mistakes. The dealing of venomous reptiles, for example, if you get bitten by a venomous snake, this is in many cases, if there is a lack of adequate facilities and all, this is not a kind of mistake you can actually learn from, because you might die. So so I think that the enforcement agencies, in this case the forest department, needs to be very vigilant, very understanding and caring about this kind of a situation, and enforcing the law in such a way wherein people don't mess around with snakes, not only for their own safety but also because the snake is a protected animal, no, it is your job to do so. And and more than anything else, everybody uses this term rescue to justify the capture of a snake which does not need rescue in 99.9% of the times. So you see a snake somewhere in the forest, a tree snake is on the tree, he has caught that snake, made some reels, all that kind of thing, released it in some other areas. It's a water body, completely out of the actual habitat and the area where that snake is supposed to be. And then he calls it a rescue, and then he has like 10,000 likes. So, looking at what has been done, looking at the likes, and looking at the type of people who are liking this illustrates complete ignorance. Number one, with social media, I think if the forest department can be a little bit vigilant about using social media to narrow down on such individuals, then it's just a matter of the divisions taking care of who is there in that area. There are not like 10,000 people in one district, for example. But if that division can take care of that, then there'll be like one or two people who are want to shine in that place and who are doing this and have become a little bit famous, and you target those guys. And when I say target, I'm not saying catch them, penalize them, throw them in jail. You can call them, ask them what their interest is. If you really see a genuine interest in and a passion in reptile or reptile rescue or whatever it is, then that person can be taken in, can be nurtured, can be registered, can be trained properly, and can then be affiliated, associated to the forest department. And he can be the go-to person when a rescue is required. In this case, he has to follow certain protocols that the forest department sets for them, or him or her or whatever. Because if you want to rescue snakes, you want to catch them, you have to do it this way. This is the accepted way to do it. You can't go and lift up a cobra and kiss it for your likes and all. You want to catch it, you can catch it, but you can catch it only when it has strayed out of its habitat and entered somebody's house, and now there's a potential danger to both. Those kind of things will actually mitigate the issue. Those kind of things will streamline rogue rescuers, and those type of things will make sure that somebody who's not registered with that particular forest division can then be penalized if he is doing something out of what is considered to be normal and ethical and correct and by the law. And that is, I think, it's a very simple thing. It just needs to be done. They need to accept that this is the issue, and then we work upon it. and you will cut down snake bite drastically. You will cut down unnecessary capture drastically. You will cut down a lot of issues if one simple thing can be done. And there's nothing out of the some thinking out of the box. It's a straightforward thing. It's very simple.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I think apart from foreign department collaboration, I think social media itself needs to come up with like more stronger, action against these people who are unethically handling animals, because nowadays, yeah, you see so many. I saw some guy like randomly picking up snakes, like in the forest, like very normally, and just like putting some captions in the reel just for likes. And I was like very angry at that. Because
Yeah,
like it's unnecessary handling. Like if the animal really is injured or something, then it's okay to handle. But like why are you handling it just for the likes? And that is the whole problem with social media. Like people do anything for the this engagement. And it's a very concerning thing right
yeah.
now, which is happening on a large scale. So
I
definitely
think
there needs to be.
if the snakes had phones themselves, many of them would be calling us up and asking them us to rescue them from these rescuers.
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah, if only snakes had a
Yeah.
voice. Yeah, so very interesting conversation, Aaron, and it was very insightful and fun. So the last question which we ask all our speakers is like, what kind of message you have for our nature enthusiastic audience, especially anybody uh, who is interested in the reptiles and wants to work with them, wants to study them. What are the things you can tell them uh, to get
I,
into this?
I think for starters, the individual themselves needs to ask themselves what is the thing that interests them about this group of animals first. And then once that happens, is to get guided by somebody who knows what they're doing. And don't try and do it by yourself. Don't let ego get into the picture. It's not about like we spoke about who thinks what about you, but rather what you're doing and what you think about yourself. So anything you're doing, you need to question yourself whether it's a correct thing, if you're doing it properly, whether the animal is being harmed, whether you're unnecessarily capturing it, what is the purpose in what you're doing. And if you are out of that picture, observing somebody doing this, putting yourself in the same position, what are the faults that you can find in what is being done, and then don't do those type of things. Ultimately, I think the most important thing is to have somebody who can guide you properly, so you don't get carried away, and do everything ethically, do everything according to law, and have a good relationship with the local forest department, so you don't get in the bad books with them. And yeah, just be safe and have respect for the animals you are working with. Have respect for yourself. Be a good person first of all, and then everything will be fine.
Yeah, those are words to live by. Yeah, that was very catchy, I think, end to the podcast. And I would again like to thank Aaron for his insights and very in-depth discussion on wildlife rescue, snakes, and everything around them. So thank you, Aaron,
Thank you
again.
so much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.